Hey guys, welcome back to LuxBiz. I'm Tatiana, and today I'm going to talk about selling on Amazon.com for Canadian sellers. So I myself am a fellow Canadian seller. I'm born in Canada, I have a Canadian company, and I sell on .com and other marketplaces for Amazon. And it's a lot simpler than a lot of people think. I think a lot of people kind of overanalyze it and they get into analysis paralysis and they just don't even want to start. It's really not that complex. So I'm going to try and make this video as quick and as painless as possible for you. But first, a disclaimer, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer, I don't have any authority to give you any legal advice. This video is based on my personal experience and take it with a grain of salt. So be a student, not a follower. Whatever I say today, take it and do your own research. Don't take it as fact. Okay, having said that, number one, things to make clear, if you're a Canadian, you're allowed to sell on Amazon.com. You're allowed to sell in Australia, in the UK, whatever marketplace you want to sell on, you're allowed to. There's a misconception that if you're Canadian, you have to sell on Amazon.ca. Not at all true. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it. If you're Canadian, start on Amazon.com. It's a far bigger marketplace. Amazon.ca is still very small, not a lot of product options. Eventually, once you start making sales on .com, then you can branch out to .ca. Number two is if you're a Canadian corporation, if you're a Canadian company, you're allowed to sell in the States. You don't need to have a US company to sell in the States. You don't need to have a UK company to sell in the UK. So that's another misconception. Number three is inventory placement. If you have inventory in Canada, if you want to sell on .ca, you need inventory in Canada. If you want to sell on .com, you need inventory in the States. So if you have to pick one, pick the States to start with because it's going to be expensive for you to buy inventory for .ca and buy inventory for .com if you're a brand new seller. So just pick one marketplace, branch out in the future. Okay, now this is where a lot of people get confused. The tax implications. So a lot of people are like, I don't understand. Do I have to pay taxes in the States? Do I pay taxes in Canada? You know, if all my sales are in the States, where do I pay the taxes? Well, if you're a Canadian seller, you're going to be paying taxes in Canada. What you're going to do is you're going to apply for an EIN number. This is an employment identification number, employee identification number. It's basically like a business registration number in Canada. You don't need a corporation to get this number. You can be a sole proprietor to attain this number. Basically, you just call the IRS, just Google the number, and they'll give it to you over the phone. Very easy. The reason you do this is because you're basically going to use this number to submit a tax return in the States, but basically telling the States that, yes, I'm a Canadian seller, but I sell in the States, but I'm going to be filing and paying taxes in Canada, not in the States. And the reason you're not paying taxes in the States is because you don't have a permanent establishment in the States. So, well, I expect that you don't if you're a new seller. And if you don't, then you pay taxes in Canada. A permanent establishment is like an office or like a fulfillment center or anything like that. Or if you have employees there. And so when you don't have a permanent establishment, you basically file that tax return and then it tells the states that, you know, yes, I'm paying taxes in Canada, don't double tax me. Very important. Another thing is sales tax and income taxes are two completely different things. In Canada, we have, you know, GST, we pay taxes for products that we purchase, in the States as well. But in the States, every single state has a different sales tax rate. Now, a lot of sellers are like, well, I don't understand. How do I pay sales taxes? How do I collect it? When do I collect it? Well, first of all, I have a really, really good interview that I'm gonna link like right here, I think, with an accountant. And he goes into depth about this, and I highly recommend you watch it because there's a lot of value and it's absolutely free. Okay, so having said that, what I learned is that sales taxes, originally you would need to pay sales taxes wherever you had nexus. Nexus means where you have a physical presence. So again, if I had a fulfillment center, if I had my inventory stored there, if I had a physical office, if I had employees, if I had a building, whatever, a space where I'm actually present. So for example, for me, I have nexus in Florida where I have a warehouse, then I would apply to collect sales tax in Florida. You can't just collect sales tax without having a sales tax permit. That's illegal. So you apply for a sales tax permit, just Google Florida sales taxes. On their website, you can apply for the permit. You receive your number, and then you can start collecting sales taxes in Florida. And then what you do is once you collect sales taxes every quarter, every year, depends on when you have to remit those, you file for your sales taxes online. And then at the end of the year, you do a state tax. You have to have your accountant help you with that probably. So now this is where it gets confusing. If you're a new seller, people are like, okay, when do I start collecting sales taxes? Well, when you're a new seller, you know, you're not really making much money. You're not very significant at that point. The government isn't going to come after you and be like, oh, give me $10 that you owe me. That's not really how it works. So don't really get over worried with all this stuff until you actually prove that your business is doing well, you know, prove that you're making sales, start to get the momentum, start to make the sales, and then worry about the sales taxes later. So prior to the Dakota Wayfair hearing, which was, I think, earlier 2018, beginning of 2018. Basically, that meant that now all the states are going to allow, ask online sellers to now collect sales taxes. Because prior to this, it was only if you had a physical presence. And so all these states were like, well, we're missing out on all this money that we could be receiving. You know, people now are shopping online more than ever. And so if I was in Florida and I went to a store in Florida, I would be paying sales taxes. But if I purchased something on Amazon, I probably wouldn't be paying sales taxes. And so the states were feeling a little bit like, well, we need this money, and so we're going to ask online sellers to now collect this money. So at what point should you actually take into consideration, should you collect the money? Well, I'm not an accountant. I can't give you this type of legal advice, but watch the interview that I had. But basically, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it right now. Wait until you're actually making a significant amount of sales in a state before you apply for your sales tax permit. And at that point, it becomes necessary, and it makes sense, because if you were to apply for a sales tax permit in every single state just to cover your bases because you wanted to comply with the government, which I'm not sure that everyone does, unless you're a multi-million-dollar seller. Sure, yeah, of course you want to cover your butt. But if you're a brand new seller, you haven't made a dime on Amazon, you're not going to go apply for a sales tax permit in every single state. First of all, to apply is going to take a hell of a lot of time. Second of all, to actually, you don't have anything to collect if you're not making sales. And thirdly, you're going to have to now have an accountant file those state taxes for every state. So that's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So analyze the risk of it, analyze the cost of it, and then make your decision and talk to an accountant. Bank accounts. So a lot of people are very confused with the bank accounts and receiving money in US dollars. So if you're Canadian and you don't care to receive the money in US dollars, say you make sales in the States, people pay with US dollars in the States. It gets deposited into your Amazon Seller Central account in US dollars. And then if you link your Canadian bank account to your Amazon Seller Central account, then Amazon will deposit those funds into your Canadian account into Canadian dollars. And so there's going to be a conversion rate, and there's probably going to be a fee. So if you don't care about losing out on a little bit of money, then that's fine. You can just link your current bank account. But if you do care and you do want to receive the money in US dollars, which I would recommend doing, because if you're going to start an Amazon business, most of your costs are going to be in US dollars. I don't think any costs are going to be in Canadian dollars unless you're sourcing in Canada. So you want to maintain that US dollar currency, because it's going to be useful for you instead of converting it once and then converting it back. You'd really miss out then. So what you do then is you need to have a US based account. Okay, so you can't just have, RBC, they have a Canadian account and they have a US account, Canadian checking, US checking. You can't link your US checking account to your Amazon account, because they will not direct deposit funds into a US Canadian bank account. You actually need a bank account that's based in the US, okay? And you can have that. As a Canadian, you can have that. I use BMO Harris. BMO Harris, you can sign up for a bank account, call them over the phone, say, this is my business, I make online sales, and I need a US-based business account, and they will hook you up. It's very easy, and then what happens is now you get your direct deposits in US currency. And if you want to pay yourself in Canadian currency or in US currency, you can then do that from your BMO Harris account to your Canadian company. So that's basically it. Hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. I didn't want to make it too long. Again, talk to the proper people for this type of advice. But if you guys want to learn more about selling on Amazon, I have a free 4-part training video series that's going to help you get started. I highly recommend clicking the link below to get started with that. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys. Hey guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell symbol so you get notified whenever I've got a new video. I highly recommend that you click the link in the description so you can subscribe to my mailing list so I can send you free Amazon FBA video trainings. And if you want to continue watching, I recommend one of these videos here. So click it.